Well, tonight we're going to continue our lessons in the Old Testament. For those that might be new to this, we have been studying through the Old Testament, by no means trying to cover all of the Old Testament in terms of every chapter, even every book. There are quite a number of books of the Old Testament that we will not look at. But we're trying to look at certain key events along the way that will help give us a framework in which we might understand the Old Testament and the way in which the Old Testament leads us up to the coming of Christ. And tonight we are going to be looking especially at the Ten Commandments. Last Sunday night we looked at the children of Israel and the night of the Passover when they left Egypt. After they left Egypt, of course, they did not go immediately up to the Promised Land. That was their ultimate destination, but it was not God's plan to take them immediately up to the Promised Land. Rather, He took them almost the opposite direction. From Egypt, you go north to get up to the Promised Land, the land of Canaan. But God took them south. He took them down to Mount Sinai. And there at Mount Sinai, He appeared to them and began to give them their structure and their organization as a nation. Gave them their constitution, we might think of it. Because after all, though they were, a people there in the land of Egypt, you could hardly think of them as a nation. They were an ethnic group, to use today's terminology, but they had no organization. They had no structure other than they knew which of the various clans or tribes that they belonged to. And so it was that when God brought them out of the land of Egypt, He took them first down to Mount Sinai. And I invite you to turn back to Exodus chapters 19 and 20. And that's going to be the heart of our lesson for today. Exodus chapters 19 and 20. It says in chapter 19 and verse 1, in the third month after the sons of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that very day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. And in verse 3, as they were camped there at the base of the mountain, says that Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel, You yourselves saw what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice, and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be, to me, a nation, or a kingdom, a priest, and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel. And so God basically says, I have brought you down here to make you my own people, to make you, to me, a holy nation and a kingdom of priests. God was basically saying, this is why you are here, because I am taking you as my people now. And of course, this is a part of the fulfilling of the promise that God had made to Abraham that we looked at in one of our earlier lessons, when God had told him that He was going to make of him a great nation. Here we see his descendants now being formed into a nation. The nation that we know as the Jewish nation, the nation that would eventually move there from Mount Sinai up into the promised land where they would take over. God told them in the rest of this 19th chapter that they were to prepare themselves because in 3 days He was going to appear and speak to them as a nation, as a people. Now, these first words that we were just looking at, God spoke to Moses, and Moses would then go back down and relay those words to the rest of the people. But He said, 3 days from now, have everybody prepare, because I am going to speak to them as a nation. And so the preparations were made, and in chapter 20, God appears, as He had said, and speaks, and the words that He speaks are what we know as the Ten Commandments.